Hi, I'm Stephen Enloe. I am the CFO and an executive producer here at 11th Hour Productions.
Awesome.
11th Hour Productions is a production company based in Los Angeles. We started in 2020, and we focus on feature films, mostly feature narrative, but this past year we did 2 feature docs, 1 short doc, and another narrative short that we just... A handful of them are finally finishing now. The short we just sent through the festival circuit and had some good acclaim from NAACP and a couple of other larger festivals, and we've been lucky with that. But this next quarter that we're coming up on is when we're actually releasing our first feature film. It's a feature narrative.
Awesome.
That I'm really excited about.
Well, how are you releasing it?
We're going to be releasing straight to streaming is what we're looking at. I'm talking with a couple of distributors right now, but we're also exploring the very relevant idea of self-distributing or going through an aggregate. We're currently talking to a handful of distributors, and we're talking about a handful of different ways that could look. I think that what's really cool about where we're at with independent film is we have a lot of options, whereas I think studio films have locked themselves into a very specific distribution and marketing format. But we are doing the very culturally and just industry-wise relevant aspect of considering what it looks like to go through actual distribution, even if it is digital rights only, as well as the idea of self-distributing, going through an aggregate, going directly to a streamer, something like that.
That's the nature of indie filmmaking. If you're going to be an indie filmmaker, you might as well indie distribute, right?
Yeah, and I think that one of the really cool aspects that has been, I think, really liberating to a lot of the indie film scene is the ability to have access to marketing, self-marketing, digital marketing,
You guys are doing panels at Sundance. Tell me about your Sundance hookup and what you guys are doing here, because it's awesome.
So the 11th Hour Lodge is an idea that I actually cooked up with a couple of people and our whole team here a handful of years ago. This has been a handful of years in the making of coming here, going to other festivals, going to panels and programming and parties and brunches and all the things that you do at Con and Sundance and Tribeca and South by and all that. And really heavily just looking at the programming, and I love so much of what is going on within the programming, but we felt like there was a little bit of a gap, right? There was so many kind of different corners that were covered. Like, you have the very hyper niche of, if you have this exact type of cultural impact short narrative film and you want to get into this exact festival, this is how to do it. And that is a fantastic panel or speaker, if that's what you're looking to do, but it's so niche. It's a niche and a niche and a niche. And then there's the other side that is just so theoretical, so esoteric, so inspirational or aspirational that it's really hard to pin down any actionable kind of key takeaways. And then there's the other side of it, which is kind of outside of the indie world, which is, hey, here's how to pitch to a studio, here's how to pitch to an executive and have them greenlight your stuff. And while I totally respect that aspect of it, I mean, my father is a screenwriter, and right out of film school, he sold The Twilight Zone to CBS. And so, that is a very, very viable and still amazing option for a lot of people. But if that's not what you're looking to do, then that is what 11th Hour Lodge is for. We wanted to create a space that we had very intentional panels and speakers that we're going to be sharing information that is, again, tangible, approachable, actionable, that, while I think you can get really amazing information that might make you think, oh, how am I going to rethink my career over the next 5 years from other panels or other programming, which is great. I want people to walk away from ours and think, how am I going to change the current trajectory of my project that I'm on right now, and what am I going to do today that's going to improve how I'm working on it? And I want people to walk away from every single panel having ideas like that.
Yeah. What's the biggest concern for you right now that you're hearing from all the filmmakers on all the panels with this current climate?
It's really funny because I think when we've framed it in such a solution-oriented kind of mindset that I don't hear about concerns on our panels. I hear about what people are excited about. I hear about, the solutions that people are finding for the obvious problems that are hurting the industry. Like anyone who's in this industry is understanding how it is currently hurting. But at the same time, it's shifting. I think it's, truthfully, I do really believe that it's growing pains. I know a lot of people don't, but I think there's this narrative that the sky is falling. And what I see is a very clear set of facts. I see that there's never been more independently held wealth in the world. I see that there's never been more of that wealth that has been invested specifically in media production. There's never been more access to commercial grade equipment that can actually capture that commercial grade high level content. There's never been more skilled workers who can actually operate that equipment. There's never been more of them who have unfortunately been out of work and are seeking work. There's never been more government subsidization dollars that have been accessible at a lower threshold of entry point to them. And there's never been more content watch hours. And that's just never existed in the entirety of the world yet. On top of all that, there's never been more distribution platforms available straight to the actual filmmaker, or more avenues for monetization. And I don't understand what parts of that lead to the sky is falling, because that seems like a really, really vast, big meadow with, a lot of potholes and things that you could trip on in that, but also a lot of opportunity and a lot of just a vast kind of horizon that we can explore as independent filmmakers, because we're not bogged down by a $3 to $10 billion business model infrastructure that has to meet very specific mandates within each of their structures to actually function. I don't have that.
That's the benefit of being independent. I mean, you don't have all those restrictions, and I love that perspective, that everything, that positive perspective. And in the end, we're storytellers, right? So stories are always going to have to be told, and storytellers will always find a way.
Yeah,
I love that.
And there's a really funny kind of, I guess not even funny, but there's a really interesting and I think accurate description of what I heard somebody call a producer, which is obviously earlier, I think last year, became like a viral thing, like what is a producer? But one of my friends just said, oh, producer's a problem solver. And I love that so much, because that's what I love about my job. But one of my best friends literally has tattooed right here. Nothing. He's not doing film at all, but in big letters it just says "Todos tienes soluciones."
Yeah.
And it's like, everything has a solution. Really.
That's very Buddhist. There's a Buddhist saying, I think the one, if there's a problem, there's a solution. If there's no solution, then there's not a problem.
Then there's no problem. Yeah.
Right.
No, I love
That's
that.
awesome. So when you let's go to you as filmmaker. When your background, your father creating Twilight Zone, but what do you go for?
He sold a Twilight Zone.
Okay, he sold a Twilight Zone.
Not the whole entirety of it.
So tell me, what moves you? What makes you? What kind of films are you working on?
Yeah, no, I thank you for the question. I love that. So essentially right now we're about to release the first feature film, which is a buddy comedy called Treasure Trove. It's really an adventure piece, very family friendly, but it's about two best friends who are on their way out of town and they get sucked into a hobo treasure hunt. And so
hobo treasure, I love that.
Yeah, your classic hobo treasure hunt. There's a million of them. No, but the two main characters, essentially by the end of the film, we've got them encountering a scorpion wrangler and a criminal ex-girlfriend, evil older brother, a gang of hobos, obviously. And then by the end of the film, they're all after our two main characters and subsequently after the treasure. And so while that is a really family-friendly and kind of light, just adventurous piece, we also have our next feature that we're working on right now, which is a life rights story. It's actually a feature narrative about a woman who was previously sex trafficked and freed herself, which is just phenomenal. We had her actually on a panel earlier today. It was amazing. And she now is a survivor advocate and speaks in front of Congress, speaks in front of the UN, trains police departments across the country. She's just the coolest, most amazing woman, and we get to do a story about that, which obviously has a lot of darker notes in it because of the evils that do exist in this world. But what we focus on in that, I think, is honestly I think really similar in the ethos of what we were talking about, even with this lodge. It's focused on the strength, it's focused on the positivity, it's focused on the redemption, because those dark parts exist throughout our world, but you can either choose to focus on them or you can choose to focus on the light parts. And I think that's what we try to do, while still giving respect to the fact that the dark parts are hard.
Yeah, but it's the dark that creates the light, right?
Yeah, that contrast, I think, it's a hard balance, because you don't ever wish to have those dark times, but the contrast of that really does allow us to appreciate the light times for sure.
Give me 1 second. Why do you think it's so important for independent filmmakers to attend festivals like Sundance? And I mean, please, like, why people outside this, and they don't get it. They just think we're on this like party thing, but why are we here?
I've had this conversation so many times. Yes, I actually have a panel on Monday, the one that I was actually talking to you about, that is about the importance of physical activation, physical presence, and I think that, thanks man. I think that one of the really important parts of this is to kind of take a step back from the film industry altogether in order to put it in the right perspective. Realistically, the statistics behind how we actually view in-person interactions as a human race are really interesting over the past few years. Because we live so much of our life in a digital sense, in a digital environment, we actually have placed a lot of weight on physical experiences. On one hand, it has created a lot more social anxiety for people. On the other hand, it has also created a lot of social kind of framing importance in our brain. That when you can actually be in front of a person talking like I'm talking to you right now, you actually ingest that memory and that kind of information differently. And I mean, you could get into so many aspects. You could get into like a full-on just like metaphysical, you could get into a full spiritual aspect of that there, but even just taking it down to the specifics of like the statistics, right? We treat in-person interactions differently than digital, and the positivity that we actually attach to that, the weight that we attach to that, has actually increased quite a bit over the last few years, especially since COVID. And so I think that alone, just that alone, I think is one reason enough to say, hey, I'm going to take the time to actually go to a festival. The other aspect of it is especially Sundance. And I think this is a very keen kind of point in that it's the last year here, but we all come from different areas. I'd say, 80% of us are coming from Los Angeles, but then we've got a bunch from New York and a bunch from all over the country, etc. And realistically, you pay hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars for your flight. You pay more than you would ever pay for the rest of the year here, which is already a very luxurious place to be at its most peak time of year, to drive an hour and a half from the airport and be stuck in a snowstorm and wait in lines all day long because this city has no infrastructure for ingesting an extra 150 or 200,000 people at once. And the chaos of that is beautiful. And I think I have a bit of a background in marketing as well, and a lot of times people will talk about the funnel and like qualifying customers, so to speak. And when you think about it in that time, in that kind of idea, it's like, okay, you're qualifying your people. You're running them through such a filter to be here. It's like a war zone. Finding somewhere that's out of the cold, somewhere that you have
cold itself is
nice,
like going into battle.
like comfy place to sit and have some music and have a drink and be with fellow filmmakers, which is why we wanted this space of the lodge here. But having that alone is like huge win. And so I don't know, you just filter out all the people who aren't committed to it. Because if they either don't have the time or it's not, oh, you don't have the money. It's like, no, you're not willing to commit it to it. Some people don't. I'm not taking that out of the factor. It is expensive, and I do feel like heavily privileged to be able to be here. And I respect that. But also, I do know a lot of people, I've been here and just like been in a house full of 1 million people before, because it's the Sundance way, you know?
Yeah.
One of the best pieces of advice I was ever actually given, it was a handful of years ago by a few mentors. I was planning my house with them, and they were like, hey, so I just want you to know, Steven, the best thing I could ever tell you about Sundance is be there. And I was like, oh, haha, yeah, I know, we have our flights booked and our Airbnb booked. And they're like, no. Regardless of us in the equation, be there. I don't care if you have to hitchhike. I don't care if you have to book a one-way ticket. You don't know when you're coming back, but I promise you, you'll find people. You'll meet them. You'll make friends with them. They'll invite you to events. You can sleep on someone's couch if you need. Like, it'll happen, and you'll find your way back. But be there. And I took it as a joke at first, but then I got here and I realized how true it was. It was a handful of years ago, and I think 2 years later, one of those two, a film they were involved heavily with, won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, and then I think it was that same year or within a year on one side of it, the other one won the Grand Jury Prize here.
Wow.
And so that kind of information I already took to heart, and then after that I was like, oh wow, that's cool. That's what that kind of mindset of being active and being present and showing the rest of the people in your community that you're committed to being here, even though it is hard to be here. That's what that gets you.
I love that. Oh, I think we can edit all that. That's amazing.
Awesome.
Be there.
Yeah, be there. Honestly, I think it's about showing people that you care and that you're committed
Showing
to this.
up. Right?
Yeah, you have so many people who are flaky. You have so many people who aren't committing. You have so many people who are hard to pin down. And if you can show people easily, like, hey, I put my time and my money and my warmth all on the line to be here.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
The best things you have to struggle, right? I think Woody Allen said the hardest part is showing up.
Yeah, or like showing up 90% or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
This has been awesome. Thank you. Seriously, this has been so
Cheers.
lovely. Cheers.